So my name's Sandy Rushton. I'm a user researcher at People-Powered Retrofit, which is a community one-stop shop helping people make their homes more energy efficient in Manchester and the north. On the Energise Manchester project, I've been working on the behaviour change design part of the project. So I've been work package lead, and I've been working really closely with our partners at NEC Digital Studios and the wider team as well to design the different things we've been doing around energy efficiency and make them work well. The reason we were doing Energise Manchester was to work with the community, sort of community partners and residents in South Manchester to understand what they needed from energy advice and what wasn't working in current systems and create new ways of delivering energy advice that worked for them. The design approach we used to create Energise Manchester was behaviour change design. So this is a kind of hybrid of human-centred design approaches and behaviour change methodologies, which kind of come from behavioural science. So it brings together sort of people-centred design where you make decisions together and you understand people's needs with sort of cutting-edge insights from behavioural science about why people do what they do and how we can adjust people's. So the reason we chose to use behaviour change design on this project was that it's been used before within sort of public health schemes and other energy advice and retrofit programs to sort of use the best practices from behavioural science to make different programs more effective, and it was a bit of a test for us as a partnership to see if using these type of techniques would make our energy advice more effective. Everyone in the project was involved in the behaviour change design process at Energise Manchester. A key partner was NEC Digital Studios, so we worked with Chani Patel and Val Mitchell, who really helped us to shape our approach. They're real experts in this area. Then People-Powered Retrofit, Carbon Co-op, Manchester Care and Repair, the Neighbourhood Health Champions team and Snook, our evaluation partner, all took part as well. So it was a real group effort, and we kind of took everyone through that journey through workshops. So Chani and I delivered workshops with the team, and we also did some training as well. Start of the project, we all got together, like everyone involved in the project, and sort of mapped out the existing activities that partners were doing to help around energy advice. Because on the Energise Manchester project, we weren't starting from scratch. Carbon Co-op had already done a lot of training in the community and a lot of engagement work, and so had our partners at Manchester Care and Repair and People-Powered Retrofit. So we started by mapping out what was already being done and looked at the key behaviours that it was impacting and where there were barriers for people. So we started out quite generic in terms of looking at just what people find difficult or what people find useful in terms of energy efficiency based on our partners' experience. But then as we got out into the community and did more engagement and did more training and learned about what the communities needed, we could get a bit more specific and understand, okay, here are the different journeys that different people might go on, and here are the different things that work to enable behaviour in different groups. There were lots of different behaviours to do with energy efficiency and energy advice, and we couldn't tackle all of them in this project. So in order to choose which behaviours we wanted to focus on, we really started with the project partners and what kind of work they've done before, where their expertise was and what skills they had. And also because they've worked on, especially Carbon Co-op, a lot of different projects to do with energy in the community, they sort of already knew like these are the areas where people struggle, or these are the really key behaviours for people to start on their journey into energy efficiency. So we kind of started from there, and then throughout the project we refined and we updated the behaviours when we learned from the community if there were specific things that they needed or specific areas where they were struggling to kind of move forward through the journey of energy efficiency. Journey mapping is a really key part of the behaviour change design process. It's a really useful way of creating like a visual map of all of the steps in a journey through a service or through a process. So in the Energise Manchester project, we used it a lot to kind of get consensus within the team about what are the different steps people need to go along, and also see where were the key points in the journey where people might get stuck, where they might not have the understanding, they might not have the ability, or they might not have the resources available to be able to get to that next step. So it was a really good way for us to all come together, understand what people were going through, and see where are the key points that we could come and help with our services. If you're wanting to involve members of the community in your behaviour change design programme, I think it's really important to think about a bit like sort of give and take. So research, especially design research, can be sort of extractive, where you're going in and asking people loads of questions and for their opinions on things, and they're not really getting anything out of it. So on the Energise program, we really tried to make sure that we had a balance between giving things to the people who were taking part, whether that was training or resources or freebies, and also learning from them about how we could make things better and really acting on it. I think making sure that you don't necessarily have loads of research and then very little kind of giving back. And I think if we were to do this again in future and continue with this, we might think about involving members of the community that we've now built these relationships with even more potentially. As we were delivering the program, we got a lot of feedback from participants in the Energise Manchester program. That might have been through like formal monitoring and evaluation forms, or just through like chatting with the team when people were out and about. And because of this, we learned a bit more about what people were struggling with and what the barriers were along different parts of the journey. We used something called the EAST principles. So EAST stands for easy, attractive, social, and timely. And these were kind of guiding principles that our team used to try to improve our services or the energy advice, to make it easier for people, more attractive so they wanted to do it, more social so that they could do it with people they knew in their communities, and more timely, so happening at a time that made sense for people. I'd say that there were 4 main aspects of the Energise program that we designed using the behaviour change design approach. So we had these things called street-based engagements, which are essentially like stalls or having people out and about in the community talking about the program. And the thinking behind this was, if people don't know about energy topics or they don't know about the program, then they are kind of not having the opportunity to engage with it. So it was really about building that awareness and giving people the opportunity to engage. Another part of the program was community-based training, so either public training or within a community group or centre. And this was looking at a barrier that people often have around energy efficiency, which is a lack of knowledge or skills. So they maybe care about energy and they want to do something about it, but they don't have the knowledge or the skills about how to proceed. So the training really aimed to overcome that barrier. A third thing was we had a champions program, which was really aimed at getting local people to talk to others in their community about their journey with energy efficiency and why it was important. So that was looking more at, if people aren't super motivated to do things about energy efficiency or they don't think it's important, often other people in their community can be a really good source of that motivation. If someone sees that their neighbour or their friend is doing something, then they want to do it too. And then finally, I think another thing that kind of went across all 3 of these was signposting. So sometimes there were barriers that people were facing that was outside of our remit within the Energise Manchester programme. It might be that they were facing financial barriers, or they had issues with a landlord, things that we couldn't really help them with through those other 3 areas. So what we had was a really good signposting approach where we could help people find the help they needed so that they could overcome those barriers. And I guess that kind of covered like awareness and opportunity and resources that people needed. When we were developing the street-based engagements, a really key tool was the EAST principles. So at one point, we really wanted people to kind of come from the street-based engagements and sign up to a training course that we were offering, and it wasn't really happening on the stalls. So what we did as a team was we got together and we wrote what's called a how might we question. So we said, how might we get more people to sign up to the training courses from the street-based engagements? And from that, then we came up with loads of ideas using those EAST principles I mentioned before. So like, how can we make it easier, more attractive, more social, or more timely, to come up with loads of ideas about how we could increase that intake from the street-based engagements to the training. So that was a really useful tool to kind of look at an area that wasn't quite working in the program and overcome it together as a team. So with the community hub-based training, this is something Carbon Cop have done a lot of before. So they've delivered training in the community, and so we started in a really strong place. A behaviour change design tool we used to improve that was mapping the barriers and the enablers during the program. So we kind of learned from people who took part about what wasn't working and what was, and we could take that, and especially really specific things about specific communities, and use that to kind of improve the program delivery. So we would map out across the journey map, sort of, here's where a barrier is happening, or here's something that we did in a workshop that worked really well and enabled people to take part. And by doing that all together, we kind of shared the knowledge across the team, and we also built on what we already knew and made it even better and more appropriate for specific communities. It actually also led to us changing our approach about halfway through the program, where initially we were only doing sort of public training, and then we realized that a key barrier for some people was around doing things in an environment that they're comfortable with or having single gender groups. So we chose to do also some workshops that were kind of closed with specific community groups, and that really helped to overcome those barriers. So yeah, I think that was a really good part of the behaviour change design that helped improve something that Carbon Co were already doing and make it more appropriate for the communities in Energise. The Energise Manchester project included a local energy saving champions programme, which was a kind of new thing that we were doing as part of this partnership. So a key tool that we used to develop that was journey mapping. Our partners at Carbon Co-op, People Powered Retrofit, they were all having to work together to deliver this programme, and as someone, a member of the public engaging in the programme, you kind of have to deal with different members of staff at different times. So by mapping out the journey and seeing all the different steps, we could understand as a team who needed to do what, who needed to talk to who, and where there might be key sort of bits of handover to make sure it was a smooth journey for people who are engaging with the programme. And I think this really helped us to all get on the same page, because when you're working across the team with different partners in different organisations who are also all working on different projects, having that map of like, here are all the steps is really helpful. For me, the impact of taking a behaviour change design approach was that we just learned absolutely loads about the needs of the communities we were working with. We didn't sort of do a research phase and then a delivery phase. We were doing all of that at the same time and constantly testing out ideas and improving things based on feedback. So I think by taking this approach, we all learned a lot, and we also could make the energy advice more appropriate for the communities we were working in. If I was going to give some advice to another group who wanted to use behaviour change design in their work, my first bit of advice would be try to work with someone who knows what they're doing. So by partnering with NEC Digital Studios and working with Chani, I learned so much about behaviour change design, and they really brought their expertise into the whole team and skilled us up on it. Also say, start with what you know, start doing work you already know how to do and you're confident in, and sort of test and iterate. So don't feel like you have to totally reinvent the wheel. Start with what you're doing and then use the behaviour change design to improve it bit by bit once you get feedback from people. And then the last thing I would say is really listen to people who are using your services in the community. Really listen to what they are saying. It's not just about what they put on feedback forms, but also just conversations you have, and then act on what they're saying, because that really builds trust and also helps you to kind of do things that really make an impact.